It started as a quiet afternoon at the ranch. I had spent the morning tending to the garden, repairing fences, and ensuring that everything was in perfect order before the weekend. But by midday, smoke began curling on the horizon. At first, I thought it was a controlled burn from a neighboring property, but as the smell of charred wood reached my nose, my heart sank. The HOA had crossed the line. Karen and her board had set fire to my house. The reason? I had refused to join the HOA, refusing to surrender control of my land and property to their arbitrary rules and overreaching authority. By the time I arrived at the scene, flames were already devouring the structure, though fortunately the fire had not spread to my barns or outbuildings. Karen and a few HOA members were there, acting as though they had done something heroic. "You refuse to comply," Karen shouted. "This is for the good of the community." I barely contained my anger, knowing that her justification was not only absurd but criminal. What she didn't realize, what she could never have anticipated, was that I had written many of the laws governing property rights, zoning, and HOA enforcement in our county. I knew the loopholes, the restrictions, and the legal boundaries that HOA boards could not cross. Essentially, Karen and her board had just committed multiple felonies in broad daylight, and their ignorance of the law would cost them dearly. I called the local authorities immediately, reporting the fire, the trespassing, and the criminal acts of arson. While firefighters contained the blaze, I provided police and investigators with detailed documentation proving that the HOA had no authority over my property. The moment the officers arrived, the full scope of their violation became apparent. Burning someone's house without consent was not only illegal but unconscionable. Karen attempted to argue that it was a community enforcement action, but her reasoning fell flat as the police reviewed both my deeds and the statutes I had authored. With legal leverage firmly in my hands, I initiated the next steps. First, the HOA members were personally cited for arson, trespassing, and destruction of property. Then, I filed a civil claim that made it clear that every penny of damage, every cost of reconstruction, and any future punitive damages would be the responsibility of Karen and her board. Their overreach had inadvertently ensured that they would be financially and legally ruined if they did not comply. Over the following weeks, I rebuilt my house, taking care to document every repair, every receipt, and every improvement. Each photograph, each structural report, and each legal filing served as evidence of the HOA's wrongdoing. Meanwhile, Karen and her board tried to save face, but public opinion quickly turned against them. Neighbors were shocked and appalled at the extreme actions taken against someone who simply refused membership, and the story spread like wildfire throughout the community. The final irony was undeniable. In attempting to enforce rules that didn't apply to me, Karen had violated laws that I had written and enforced myself. Every action she took, every order she gave, only strengthened my legal position. By the time the courts were involved, the HOA faced enormous penalties, and Karen's credibility was entirely destroyed. Now, standing in my rebuilt house, I reflect on the incident with a mix of disbelief and satisfaction. The HOA had thought they could intimidate me with destruction, but their ignorance of the law, and my intimate knowledge of it, turned their aggression into a public disaster. On my land, I make the rules, I enforce the laws, and anyone foolish enough to overstep quickly learns that violating statutes written by the property owner is the fastest path to ruin. Karen may have tried to burn me out, but in the end, the laws I authored and my careful preparation ensured that justice and full control remained firmly in my hands.